Hey, Michael Didier here. Thank you for joining me. Well, last week we started Passover, Yehovah's ordinances, kukok, regarding Passover. Oh, we've seen so many interesting things. This really is a continuation. I'm going to use the same blog that I used last week, and I'm going to put 2 videos on that particular blog. I think it's just too important, and I want to have those 2 classes together. Let me do a quick review. We basically have 2 portions in Torah, Exodus 12, that we talked about last week. One was Yehovah's instructions to Moses. You can see it here at the top of the page. It begins this way. He says, this month shall be the beginning of months. This Kodesh shall be the beginning of Kodesh. Kodesh. If you look at that word, we're looking at new moons. This new moon, a new moon is only seen at the evening. Our days, our months begin at the evening. He also said this shall be the beginning of months, this month. And we're going to see later that this is the Kodesh of the Aviv Kodesh. Ooh, that's so interesting. We've got to put all the pieces together. You know what? People are misled because they follow a scripture verse and they miss it in the context of the whole. Oh my goodness. We have learned lies and we've got to go far deeper. We're going to see in the review this morning that there's a place where it talks about according to each man's needs, according to his families. Because we think in nuclear family context instead of multi-generational families, misconstrue these instructions. But we saw 3 places last week where Yehovah specifically says that all your males shall appear before Yehovah at the Passover. I get criticized for telling people that it's not about ladies attending the Passover. I don't think ladies even ate the Passover. Well, we're going to look at some of those things that we covered last week, and we're going to see it more today. Look what it says. Speak to the congregation of Israel. On the 10th day of the month, every man, that's every shall take for himself a lamb according to the house of his fathers, a lamb for a household. Remember, we're talking about multi-generational homes. We assume that the ladies ate with their men. But was there times when men, sons, maybe even servants were to eat together? I think there was. He tells us, speak to the congregation of Israel. This is the assembly of Israel. This is what you get kicked out of if you're a ger or an Ezrach, and you don't keep the Passover. That's Numbers 9. You get kicked out of the congregation of Israel, and your sin remains on you. It says, on the 10th of this month, every man shall take for himself a lamb. A ze'on is the word that we're talking about there, because it can be a lamb or a goat. In verse 4, he says, and if the household is too small for the lamb, let him and his neighbor next to his house take it according to the number of persons. You see, persons, and we tend to think it's lady persons as well, don't we? According to each man's need, you shall make your count for the lamb. Here he's talking about the whole assembly of the congregation shall kill it at twilight on the 14th day. They, you, all these are the men. Look what it says in verse 14. This is still Yehovah's instructions to Moses. Twice, at least twice, maybe 3 times, in his instructions to Moses, he's going to say something like this. Look at verse 14. So this day shall be to you a memorial, and you shall keep it as a feast to Yehovah throughout your generations. You shall keep it as a feast by an everlasting ordinance. An olah, everlasting. Kukok is the other word. Guess I don't have it in here. Ordinance. He says it here in 14 or 17. Remember, 14, 17, 24, 42. 4 places. He says practically the same thing. Therefore you shall observe this day throughout your generations as an everlasting ordinance. 24. And you shall observe this thing as an ordinance for you and your sons forever. This is 3 times that Yehovah has said this to Moses to tell Israel's seed. Do you think it's important when he repeats himself 3 times? Well, let me go back up. I had a couple things I wanted to show you still. 19. Here, again, for 7 days no leaven shall be found in your homes. Who's your? Do ladies own homes or do the men own homes? Always the men own the property. The men own the women. The men own the servants. Since whoever eats what is leavened, that same person, see, we see person and right away we think what? Lady persons. It's not about lady persons. It's about men persons. It says that same person shall be cut off from, there it is, the congregation of Israel. The assembly, Israel's assembly. But look what it says. Whether he is a stranger or a native of the land. A native of the land. This is what it's all about. Becoming the land's native. We're looking at a heavenly kingdom. The stranger leaves the kingdom of his birth and joins himself to Israel. He dwells with Israel. And then at Passover, he's going to become the Ezra man. We're going to find out who the Ezra man is today. I'm going to show you conclusively that when we talk about Israel's seed, Beni Israel, we are strictly talking about the Ezra men. But here, he's talking about unleavened bread. That same person shall be cut off from the congregation of Israel. You don't want to be cut off from the congregation of Israel. You want to join yourself to the congregation of Israel and stay in Israel and become Israel at Passover. Whether he's a stranger or a native of the land in Ezra. Sometimes it says Ezra, Ezratz, or Eretz, Ezra. Men. There are no lady Gerim. There are no lady Ezra. This is strictly a masculine term. Let's continue. He says, then Moses called to all the elders of Israel. So now Yehovah has given Moses and Aaron the instructions. Now Moses is going to give it to Israel. But who's he going to give it to? Look what it says. All the elders of Israel. These are men. Men, probably from each tribe, who are then going to disseminate that information to the heads of the households in their tribes. Could they even have a, how should I say, an order of dissemination? Men who rule over 50, men who rule over hundreds, men who rule over thousands. Did they divide us that way? How did they communicate? See, these elders are going to talk to the men of their tribe. The men of their tribe are going to talk to their families. The men of their families. And it's going to move on down. And we're going to see that over and over and over again. He says, according to your families. See, we see families, and what do we think? We think mom, dad, and the kids. But I don't think that's what we're talking about when we're talking about Passover. We're talking about all those families within those tribes. You'll see it. Look at here. And you shall observe this thing as an ordinance for you and your sons forever. Well, how come it doesn't say daughters? You and your sons, for thou and thy sons, literally is what it says. Look what it says down here. And it shall be when your sons say to you, what do you mean by this service? What do you mean by this service, Dad, not Mom? Look what it says. And you shall say Passover. I'm reading here on the right. And you shall say Passover slaughter. It is to Yahovah, who passed over the houses of Israel's seed in Egypt when he smote the Egyptians' houses. Hear that? He passed over our houses. What did he see on our houses so that he knew that it was our houses? Could it be the blood on the doorway? He smote the Egyptians' houses and delivered the people who were bowheaded, humbled. They humbled themselves and followed Yahovah's instructions. They maybe didn't want to do Yahovah's instructions, but they humbled themselves. And they kept Yahovah's instructions and worshiped him. They acted in accordance with his desire for his men. That's what worship is. It's not glory, hallelujah. It's serving Yahovah, loving Yahovah with your heart and with your mind and your emotions and your life. The things that you say and the things that you do. That's true worship. I think it's so interesting that he's making a distinction between the houses of Israel and the houses of Egypt. That's how it's divided nowadays. The houses of Israel and the houses of Egypt. You want to make your house a house of Israel? This is how you do it. This is why I put together that Born Again series. We, who kept these instructions that night, became Israel. And this is what the dads are saying. Is making a difference between Israel's houses, whom Yahovah delivered, and the houses of the Egyptians. Is there a day coming? I think there may be. Is there a day coming when Yahovah is going to make a difference? He's going to do this same kind of thing again. And the men who are ready and participating in Passover the way it's meant to be, who have left the kingdom of their birth, aren't serving other Elohim, are then going to become Ezra men, marked with the sign, the oat, on their door, so that Yahovah will pass by them and destroy the others, mark the others for destruction. I think it's coming. What else do we have here? The firstborn. Who was it that died? It was the men. Men. The men died. You know what? I got to criticize Yasher. They got the ladies dying. It's not about the ladies dying. It's about the men, the firstborn, the men who are opening the matrix. We're going to talk about more of that as we get into chapter 14. It's the firstborn who are going to perish. It says there was not a house where there was not one dead in Egypt. Well, this is getting to where we left off. We said that Israel's seed journeyed from Ramses to Sukkot, about 600,000 men. 600,000 men. It says men. The word they're using here is Gibor. Gebarim. Gebarim. You know what? Nimrod was called a perverse, mighty Gebarim. Mighty man. A perverse Gebarim. He had the garments of Adam, and he became a perverse Gebarim. The warriors. The warriors. Ha, Gebarim. Besides children. It doesn't even talk about the ladies. Their women are part of them. In Torah, when a woman is taken by her man, she disappears. Rarely is she ever even discussed. The 10th commandment. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's woman. Nor his male servant, nor his female servant. In Deuteronomy 31, maybe it's 13, 31 I think, it talks about on the 7th month, in the 7th year, the year of release, all the men, all the women, all the children, all the ger. No, it says, thy ger shall appear before Yahovah. One time, every 7 years, our women are going to come to a feast. That's Yahovah's plan. It's men that come to the feast otherwise. They're appearing before Yahovah. We saw this at Shavuot. Don't go near a woman for 3 days. We're going to see it. Chapter 19 of Exodus. It's coming up soon. Don't come near a woman. Don't come near your wife. No, that's not what it says. Don't come near a woman for 3 days. You're going to meet with me. I need you clean. Well, I guess this is where we left off. It said, the last verse we read, and they baked unleavened cakes of dough that they had brought out of Egypt. For it was not leavened. Why, it says? Because they were driven out of Egypt and could not wait. No, that's not why it was. Yahovah specifically told them, get the leaven out of your house. Nor had they prepared provisions for themselves. Reminds me of Ephraim. Do you remember just a few weeks ago we were talking about Ephraim's seed leaving in the 400th year, but it was the 400th year, but they took it from Abraham's 70th year instead of Abraham's 100th year. And they were off by 30 years. And remember, they died. They died in Canaan. The valley of dead bones is where those men ended up. They didn't bring provisions. They had silver and gold, but they didn't bring a lot of provisions. Now we have lots of silver and gold. We're going to see lots of silver and gold today that we're going to come out of Egypt with. We're leaving that country destitute. Well, it says, now the sojourn of Israel's seed who lived in Egypt was 430 years. You asked practically everybody. I'm sure they do it even in Bible quizzes. How long was Israel in Egypt? 430 years. Right. Wrong. Sorry, bud. No, we were in Egypt for 210 years. And we have to understand, the evidence is there. If you just look, the evidence is there. Jochebed, there's all kinds of ways to say it, was the daughter of Levi, the mother of Moses. We have her whole life. She was born when we came into Egypt, gave birth to Moses at about 130 years old, and Moses has taken us out at 80 years old. It's 210 years. It works. But because we see this, we don't understand all that we're supposed to understand. We think that the count starts when we come into Egypt proper. But we must understand that Abraham was in Haran when he got this prophecy. And that's when the time started ticking. So if Haran is Egypt, and Canaan, where he was for the next, what was he? He died 175 years. All those years, it was Egypt. The prophecy that came to Abraham when he was 99 years old. Was it 99 or was it 100? Let's take a quick look. I've got it here. I really would like you to read this article. If you've been in my class, you've probably heard this stuff before and seen this stuff before. Here, this is, here it is, 400 years. Then he said to Abraham, know certainly that your descendants, right there is the clue. He doesn't have any descendants yet. He's going to have Isaac when he's 100 years old. That's the start of the 400-year prophecy. But there's already been 30 years before that. This is the link that I want you to go to. Let me just click on this. I'm going to show you where it is on my blog. This is spiritually born seed. Oh, maybe I don't have this on here yet. I don't. Spiritual seed, spiritually born seed. You can find it right here. No, where can I find it? I want you to read this. I'm going to copy it and paste it and give it to you. Carissa, would you do that for me?
Sure, what is it? Spiritually born seed? Absolutely.
Yeah, spiritually born seed.
Yep.
You'll have to look it up. It's a post.
No, I've got it.
Okay, thanks, baby. Yeah, read this for me, and you'll see these dates and how they fit together. This is critical to our understanding about how long we were in Egypt. This helps us understand that the whole world is Egypt. We're in Egypt right now. Babylon, same thing. No difference. If you're not Israel, he's making a difference between Egypt and Israel. Babylon and Israel. Here, look at what it says in our next portion here. I think it's coming up. Oh, I know where it is. It was in chapter 11. We talked about it last week. Look at this. But against none of Israel's seed shall a dog move its tongue, against man or beast, that you may know that Jehovah does make a difference between the Egyptians and Israel. If you're not Israel, you're the Egyptians. Beware! A dog's not going to move his tongue against Israel's seed. The Ezra men won't do it. What's he talking about? Moving his tongue. Eating the dead. This is what we're talking about. Against man or against beast. Wait till you see what it says in Yasher. We're going to see this fulfillment of this words that were spoken by Moses. 41. And it came to pass at the end of the 430 years, listen to this, on that very same day. Very same day. What does that say? That says 430 years and 400 years prior to this very same day, Yehovah, Abraham, really first Abram, and then Abraham, were meeting with Yehovah on the very same day. He's going to say it twice because he's going to say it again at the end of this chapter. It came to pass that the armies, there's the armies. See what that word is? Here it is right here. Zava. Here we'd have Zavayim. Oh no, Zavot. It's the armies. It's multiple. It's plural. Plural of Zavah. The hosts. I think it's plural because it is all the tribes of Israel coming out. How many tribes is there? 12 or 13? Remember, Joseph had 2 tribes added to him because his son, Manasseh and Ephraim, were taken as sons of Jacob. He adopted them. There are the extra tribes. We got 13 tribes. And each one of those is the armies, the hosts of Yehovah. Ooh, so interesting. It says it's changing gears. This is number 42. Remember, I saw it 14, 17, 24, and 42. I always remember 42 is the opposite of 24. Just transcribe those. Here it says, this is a night of solemn observance to Israel's seed throughout their generations. It's a night of solemn observance to Yehovah for bringing them out of the land of Egypt. 43. This is where it begins. This is where my eyes years ago were opened. You know, I kept a real Passover for the first time about 9 or 10 years ago. Slaughtered a goat. We used a lamb that particular year. Slaughtered a lamb and did all the things that we were supposed to do. I went kicking and screaming. Don't you know Jesus is the Passover lamb? The lamb that takes away the sins of the world. My thinking was stinking in those days because I was basing it on commentary designed by men to turn you away from Yehovah's eternal and unchanging instructions that are for us throughout our generations and everlasting covenant. But it wasn't until I did it that Yehovah opened my eyes, washed my eyes, and helped me to see. I saw 4 kinds of men. There's really 5 men that they talk about here. But there's really 4 kinds of men that we need to understand. Here's the first one. It says, and Yehovah said to Moses and Aaron, this is the ordinance. Here it is, the ordinance. The kukah. Kukah. Maybe this is even kook. Kook. I want to check that out. I thought it was kukah. This is the ordinance. Hakuk. No, it's kook. Kuk. Not kuka. Yeah, they got kind of the wrong word on there. That's interesting. Kuk. The ordinances. This is the ordinance of the Passover. Look what he's saying. There shall no alien eat thereof. They call him a foreigner in New King James Version. But the word that we're really using here is ben nakar. Here it is. Here's the ben. Ben. And here's the nakar. Nakar. Ben nakar. A son of a foreigner. Or really, a foreign son. A foreign son shall not eat it, is what Yehovah says. The Ben Nakar shall not eat. This is not ladies. No Bens are ladies. It's about men. You know what? I know I sound anal, but I have to do this for us so that we can begin to see the truth of these verses. Then it says, but every man's servant. Servant. Every man's. Isha's. Every Isha's servant. Okay? There are no lady aved. When you have circumcised him, then he may eat. Are you starting to see a theme? He says the sojourner. Sojourner. The word they're using here is toshab. Very interesting word. We're talking about men. Here, look at this. Masculine noun meaning a sojourner or a foreigner. Okay, this is a dictionary. They're trying to deal with all the translations that are out there. And sometimes, I mean, we just saw one they called Ben Nakar an alien. Not a bad name, really. He's an alien. Oh, I had, in fact, let me just pull this in here. Here it is right here. Alien. Citizen of another land or kingdom. Doesn't know Israel. Doesn't know anything about Israel. Never even met Israel. I was like that for about the first 45 years of my life. Never met Israel. Didn't know a thing about Israel. Here, it's a masculine noun. Look what it says. Oh, this is so good. This is word study. If you don't have word study on your eSword, you really need to invest in it. It's about $40, but it's well worth it. I've used it for 15 years. It's so good. Masculine noun meaning foreign. The word comes from a root meaning to scrutinize, perhaps drawing on the idea that people look closely at something foreign or strange. You know what? A man who doesn't know Israel is steeped in the ways of the kingdoms of this world. To us, they're strange. That's why Yahweh says that he's going to mark the men who cry and sigh for the abominations who are being done in the land. They can see the abominations because they know Yahweh's ways. To us, the Ben Nakar is strange. It says the word modifies other nouns to signify a foreigner, or a foreign Elohim. It uses the word nokri when we talk about a nokri land, a foreign land. Instead of calling Ruth a Nakar, they called her a woman from a Nokri land. Ooh, so interesting. In this case, the noun that it's modifying is Ben, son, a foreign son. I guess that could be a foreigner. But we're talking about men. So then we went to the next verse. Every man's servant. We talked about that. Then 45, the sojourner. I like this word sojourner. I know when the New King James uses sojourner, for the most part, if I look it up, it's going to use this word right here, toshav. Toshav. As I said, a masculine noun. A sojourner, a foreigner. This word implies a temporary visitor who were dependent in some way on the nation in which they were residing. A temporary visitor. He's not one of us, but he knows us. We have dealings with this man. Maybe he's one of our, if we own a business, one of our subcontractors, one of our suppliers. Maybe we supply his business with some of our goods. We have a relationship. Maybe he took one of our daughters, shouldn't have, or maybe one of his daughters was taken by us. Shouldn't happen. But there's a relationship there somehow. That's a toe shop. He's not. He's still a member of another country. Still going to do Christmas. Still going to do Easter. Still doing all the sun god worship. But he's seeing that we do things differently. That's the sojourner. And he says, a sojourner and a hired servant shall not eat it. Hired servant. Servant can come from Israel. A servant can come from the sojourners. We could hire a sojourner to work for us. Still the same kind of person. We could hire somebody from Israel to work with us. He's a hired servant. We're not going to have him eat it, but he can go back to his place if he's Israel or a ger, and he can eat it in his home. But not with us. He's a hired servant. The Toshab won't eat it with us. Not one of us. Look what it says. In one house it shall be eaten. You shall not carry any of the flesh outside the house, nor shall you break one of its bones. Look what it says. All the congregation of Israel, all Israel's congregation shall eat it. Israel's congregation. Israel's congregation is the Ezrach. I'm going to show you today. Congregation. It's a company, a group of people with a common testimony, it says in the ancient Hebrew lexicon of the Bible. He said it before. Speak to Israel's congregation, saying, on the 10th day of the month, each man shall take a lamb for his father's house. Same verse, or same chapter, 19th verse. For in 7 days no leaven shall be found in your houses, since whoever eats any of the leaven, that person shall be cut off from Israel's congregation. Same thing, from Israel's congregation, whether he's a ger or an Ezrach. Can't be cut off from Israel's congregation if you're still an Egyptian. And remember, a ger and an Ezrach are masculine terms. We're going to talk about them right now. Verse 48. This was the key to unlocking so many things for me about 10 years ago, after I kept that Passover for the first time. Let's read it. And when a stranger, a ger, dwells with you to keep the Passover to Yehovah, let all his males be circumcised. Hear that? Let all his males be circumcised. And then let him come near and keep it. And look what it says. And hayah. And exist. And become. And behold. As a native of the Eretz. The Ger is going to become as a native of the land. You know what? We haven't even seen the land. We're in Egypt. None of us have been in the land of Israel. But we all became a native of the land that night that we took the Passover, put the blood on the doorway. This is a spiritual birth into another kingdom. It's preceded by circumcision. It's men. There are no ladies getting circumcised here. It's all about men. Women get their relationship to Yahovah through their man. As a son of Yahovah, Carissa is a daughter of Yahovah. That's the relationship. He says, for no uncircumcised person shall eat it. Hear that? Does that sound like ladies aren't going to be eating the Passover? No uncircumcised person shall eat it. Look at this. I want to just show you some things. We're talking about Ger. You know what? I guess I skipped the Ger again, didn't I? Let me just go back again. I want to do the Ger real quick. Oh, I guess it's in the same chapter. We're still in the same chapter, so I'm all right. Let me just show you something. This is about Ezrach. It says, wait on Yahovah. This is Psalms 37, 34 through 36. Wait on Yahovah and keep his way, his derek, and he shall exalt thee to inherit land. He will exalt thee to inherit land. He hasn't done that for me yet. I expect him to do it in the future. When the wicked are cut off, you shall see it. I have seen the wicked in great power and spreading himself as an Ezrach. Hear that? The wicked is spreading himself as an Ezrach. He's taking the land that doesn't belong to him. Yet he passes away, and behold, he was no more. Indeed, I sought him, but he could not be found. No, he spread himself like an Ezrach. When the man becomes an Ezrach, now he's got rights to come in to possession of lands. But until then, he's got no rights because the earth is Yahovah's and all those who dwell in it. Yahovah's heirs, his sons, his Bekor, his firstborn is Israel. And they're the ones who are going to inherit the land. They're the ones who are going to inherit Canaan, the land that Yahovah promised to Abraham's seed. This is Numbers chapter 9. Look what it says here. If a stranger dwells among you and would keep Yahovah's Passover, he must do so according to the rite of the Passover and according to its ceremony. Then you shall have one ordinance, one kukok. There's the bigger word, kukok, kukah. Both for who? The Egyptian? The Gentile? No, the Ger. And the Ger. And to the Ger, and for the Ger. And for the native born in the land man. Look at. And for Ezrach. You know, I always say Ezrach. Ezrach. Like an H, but it's really Ezrach. It's a het. As a native born of the land. And there it is, the land. What land are we talking about? Yahovah's land. We're there. That's why the wicked are going to be cut off from the earth, but the righteous are going to remain. Just the opposite of what we've been taught about the rapture. Foolishness, because we don't understand the scriptures. Look what he says. One law. One law shall be for the native born and for the stranger who dwells among you. Who's the you that we're talking about? The native born. The Israel's seed. Israel's seed is the native born. I want to go through some things here. This is Exodus 12:49. It's the one we just talked about, but again, it's the Ezrach. Here's the Ezrach. For the Ezrach, for Ezrach, and for Ger, for Ger, for Garim, for Ger, singular. Ezra is singular. Ezra doesn't have a plural form. Isn't that interesting? Garim has a plural form, but Ezra doesn't have a plural form because Yehovah's seed is spiritual seed. It's the plural he that we talk about, the male child that we've talked about in the past. We'll talk about him again. We talk about him all the time. Who dwells among you? Thus all Israel's seed, there it is. Beni Israel did as Yehovah commanded Moses and Aaron, so they did. The native born did as they were supposed to do. They are Israel's seed. Look at this is Leviticus 18. You shall therefore keep my statutes and my judgments, and shall not commit any of these abominations, those of the Ezrach and the Ger who dwell among them. You, the Ezrach and the Ger who dwell among them. Who's he talking to? We just have to go to the top of this. Speak to Israel's seed. Israel's seed is the Ezrach. Do you want to become Israel? Become an Ezrach. It gets better. Look at this. Therefore I said to Israel's seed, Beni Israel, no one among you shall eat blood, nor the Ger who dwells among you shall eat blood. Hear that? Using the same verbiage, only instead of saying Ezra and the Ger who dwell with them, now he's switching it up and saying the Beni Israel and the Ger who dwells with them. Ooh, so interesting. And the Sabbath produce, Leviticus 25:6, of the land shall be food for you. For you, your male and female servants, your hired man, and the stranger who dwells with you. There's only two kinds of men in Israel, the Ger and the Ezrach. You don't have to look far to see that we're talking about Beni Israel in this chapter as well. One ordinance shall be for you of the assembly. You of the assembly. Remember, we're talking about the assembly of Israel. You of the assembly. And for the stranger who dwells with you. The Ger who dwells with you. An ordinance forever throughout your generations. As you are, so shall the stranger be before Yehovah. One law and one verdict shall be for you and for the stranger who dwells with you. Still talking about Israel's seed. Look at this one. This is really amazing. Oh, you know what? I thought I had another note in here. Let me just do this. 15. Let's go to 15. I'm going to come back here. And I want to go to the beginning of 15. Look who he's talking to. Speak to Israel's seed and say to them. This is the context of this 15th chapter. He's speaking to Israel's seed. You and the Ger who dwells with you. Again, contrasting it with the many times that he says the Ezra and the Ger who dwell with them. We've got to see it in the context, and we've got to see it as the whole to pull it all together and to find out who is Beni Israel. It's critical. It's men, nothing else. We're going to see that. Stay with this thought. See, as we go through these chapters, we're going to see it over and over and over. Let me go back. Yeah. Oh man, look at this one. This is what really pulled it together for me. This is Leviticus 23. This is the end of Leviticus 23. I think it's the last two verses, 42 and 43. Maybe there's a 44th verse, but it's the last two verses pretty much of Leviticus 23. Listen to what it says. It says, ye, talking about Israel's seed, shall be seated again, imperfect, second person, masculine, plural, in protective coverings. Talking about Sukkot and where we're supposed to dwell on Sukkot. 7 days. Remember, it's an 8-day celebration, but for 7 days, we're going to dwell in protective coverings. Why? Because we're under Yahovah's covering when we are Israel. And this is an outward sign of an inward reality. 7 days, all those who are Ezra, look at, they use the word Ezra. Ha, Ezra, in Israel, they shall be seated in protective coverings. Those are the men, not the Ger. The Ezra are the men who are going to be in protective coverings. That your generation may know that in protective coverings, this is all sukkahs. Sukkot, it's the plural form of sukkah. Sukkot. That your generations may know that in Sukkot, Beni Israel dwelt. Did you hear that? The Ezra, Ezra, dwelt in Sukkot. And now Yahovah says that your generations may know that in protective coverings, Israel's seed, Beni Israel, dwelt. Beni Israel and the Ezra are one and the same. We must understand this. Failure to understand this, failure to use the children of Israel, failure to make it the women of Israel, failure to make it the men of Israel even, it's better, it's still not right, is going to turn us in a way we should not go. And it will prevent us, if we think we already are Israel, it's going to prevent a man from becoming the Ezra, from becoming the Ger, and then becoming the Ezra. And it's going to throw the women completely sideways. They can't be circumcised. It's not about them keeping the Passover. We've learned lies. I'm trying to save your life. Please, please hear what I'm saying. You can't argue with this. Well, let's talk about the Ger and the Ezra. I want to mention the Ger. Here's, I had a definition for it. Yeah, there it is there. A man who has left the kingdom of his birth. This is the Ger, what gets called the stranger in most Bibles. A man who has left the kingdom of his birth and has joined himself to Israel. We're going to see today that there is going to be a mixed, what do they call those guys? A mixed, oh, it's a really, they always want to say multitude. It's not multitude. We have to look at that word, and we will look at that word. In fact, did we already see that word? Oh, I don't want to change this right now. I'll lose my place. Remind me, I'll come back to that spot. A man who has left the kingdom of his birth and has joined himself to Israel. You know, when we became Israel on Passover, the 14th of Aviv, and left on the 15th, there was a whole bunch of people that left with us. They did not eat the Passover, but they went with us. They were the new Ger. There were Ger who ate the Passover and became Ezrach. But now these Ger are going to have to wait till the following year to become Ezra men. Ger, stranger, a man who has left the kingdom of his birth and has joined himself to Israel. He follows all of Jehovah's ways no matter where he lives. Here, look what it says. You shall have the same law for the stranger and one from your own country, the Ezrach. For I am Yehovah, your Elohim. One law shall be for the native born, the Ger, and for the Ezrach, and for the stranger who dwells with you. Look at what word study says about the Ger. Oh, this is really interesting. Again, a masculine noun. They say stranger, alien, sojourner. Usually, not always, in my New King James, it says stranger. Sometimes it says other things. Sometimes it says a stranger when it's really saying a gor. Sometimes it says stranger when it's really saying a toshab. You always got to look these words up if you want to get the understanding and actually see what Yehovah is saying. The word indicates in general anyone who is not native to a given land or among a given people. Oh, you know what? There's so much more to this. I want to get the rest of it. Oh, here we go. Tereshab Ger. A masculine noun. The word indicates in general anyone who is not native to a given land or among a given people, but who has joined himself to such land and people. Did you hear that? He's joined himself to such land and people. He's not a native, but he's joined himself to such land and people. He dwells with them. One law shall be for the native born and for the Ger who dwells with you. Now we're talking about the Ezrach. We're talking about Israel. We're talking about the Ezra men. He said, let my son, my Bekor, Israel, go. We did not leave until we became Israel. Then we left. It's going to happen again. Are you going to be the Israel who's brought out? Or are you going to be the Ger who goes with them in the end? If you're still alive. You may not still be alive. Here's the Ezrach. A masculine noun indicating native-born person of the land, as opposed to a stranger, Ger, or a settler, Toshab. We would say sojourner, Toshab. These persons, all men, had full rights to take part in Israel's rites and festivals. Oh my goodness. Comes from this word. No, it doesn't. This is Strong's, I believe, from H22224. In a sense, a springing up. Hear that? A springing up, a spontaneous growth. It says that is native person. Bay tree, oftentimes they want to call the Ezra a native-born tree. Oh, it just really throws us off as far as understanding Jehovah's word. But it's a spontaneous growth. a springing up. We woke up agar. We went to bed in Ezrach. That is a springing forth. Comes from this word 224. A primitive root, properly to irradiate, to shoot forth beams, that is to rise as the sun. You want to see the sun rise in the last days, the light of righteousness going forth into the world? That's what I want to see. But recall the former days in which, after you were illuminated, you endured a great struggle with sufferings. Oh my, this is such good stuff, you guys. Verse 50. Thus all Israel's seed did. Israel's seed is going to follow Yahovah. The Ezrach are going to do the things that they were created to do. As Yahovah commanded Moses and Aaron, so they did. And look what it says. Again, Yahovah is repeating himself. Why? I think he wants us to understand this 430 and this 430-year prophecies. Because we don't understand it. We still thinking that we dwell in Egypt proper for 430 years. Not the case. And it came to pass on the very same day that Yahovah brought Israel's seed out of the land of Egypt according to their zavot. Well, we can now go to 13. This is what I said was going to be in 14. I was wrong. It's 13 that we're going to talk about this. So here we are. We're coming out. Then Yahovah spoke to Moses, saying, so Yahovah speaking to Moses. He says, consecrate to me all the firstborn. Notice there is a marching order. What would you call it? The military has the general, the colonels, the captains, the sergeants, pecking order. I don't really, that's kind of a negative thing to use. But there's a way, an orderly fashion in way Yahovah speaks to his people. It's coming through Moses. In the last days, it's going to come through his servants that he's going to set apart because they were ready. They were marked at Passover. They became the male child that was born in a day. And they were set apart to bring people back to Yahovah. They set the example. That's what I want for you, to set the example. I want to help you be the great ones in Yahovah's kingdom. Listen to what he says. Consecrate to me all the firstborn. Whoever opens up the womb among Israel's seed. Not talking about the Egyptian seed. Talking about whoever opens up the womb among Israel's seed. Both man and beast is mine. Firstborn. We're talking about Bekor. Here. Bekor. Consecrate to me all the Bekor. Whatever opens the womb, the firstlings of the womb is what we're talking about. Consecrate to me the firstborn, the firstlings of the womb, the firstlings. Pitar. Womb is rakam, but it's about matrix. You know, when we look at a chart of our forefathers, that chart is a matrix. Man, 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 man. Yeah, we do women and we change those things, but it's about men. When Yehovah does it, it's always about men. The only time a woman is mentioned is if she's going to give birth from a specific man to a specific man or of a specific man. But it's not about her, it's about him. That's the matrix. The seed goes to the seed, and we teach our sons and our sons' sons and our sons' sons' sons the ways of Yehovah. You see it everywhere. It's Deuteronomy 6. Just open your eyes. Because the Bible's making children, it's still sons. It's still Benim. Thy Benim. And to thy Benim's Benim. We're talking about sons. Consecrate to me all the firstborn. Whoever opens the womb, the firstlings of the womb among Israel's seed, both man and beast, is mine. And Moses said to the people, remember this day in which you went out of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. For by strength of hand, Yehovah brought you out of this place. No leavened bread shall be eaten. Isn't it interesting? We got two things going on here. Consecration of the firstborn and unleavened bread. Two things going on at once. On this day, you are going out in the month, in the Aviv month. You know, look at it. It says the month Aviv. The month Aviv. I'm surprised it doesn't say the month of Aviv. Usually that's what it says in most Bibles. But we're talking about the Aviv. Here it is. The Aviv. Ha-Aviv. Ha-Aviv month. Kodesh. Going out in the Aviv month. No other month is the Aviv month. We're talking about the first month of the year, the month that we're going to keep Passover. Now the flax and the barley were struck, for the barley was in the head. This is number 9. We read it just a short time ago. The barley was in the head, the flax was in the bud. They were struck. But the wheat and the spelt were not struck, for they are late crops. Here's another one. This is Exodus 34. The feast of unleavened bread you shall keep 7 days. You shall keep 7 days. You shall eat unleavened bread as I commanded you in the appointed time in the month of the Aviv. For in the month of the Aviv you came out of Egypt. We came out in the Aviv month. And it shall be when Yehovah brings you into the land of the Canaanites, the Hittites. Remember, the Canaanites. The Hittites and all these other guys are all Canaanites. I almost think it should be the land of the Canaanites. Semicolon. The Hittites. The Amorites. The Hivites. Remember, the Hittites are Hettites. Het, the son of Het. But this gets weird too, because then it says Hittites, Amorites, Hivites. We have Amorites. See Amori on the right. Canaan begat Sidon, bottom one right here. Canaan begat Sidon, his firstborn, then Het. That's the Hittites. But he also calls them the Jebusite. The Jebusite. Then he says the Amorite. The Amorite. That's the son of Amari. There he is right there. Amari. Het, the son of Het. We're going to talk about the Hivites. And the last one, it seemed like there was one more. Oh, yeah, the Jebusite. Well, look, there is no Jebus. The Jebusite is the Hettites. Het, the Jebusites. So it's kind of like got those guys twice. I don't know what the story is with that, but I know I'm right because we've seen this over and over and over. Just that's why I say that's why I got it in pink. Jebusites. which he swore to your fathers to give you, not your mothers, your fathers, to give you the sons of Israel, the Ezrach man, the land flowing with milk and honey. Remember, as an Ezrach man, we are an heir to Yehovah, who has all the earth as his own. We inherit the land, that you may keep this service in this month. He says, 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread, and on the 7th day there shall be a feast to Yehovah. A feast to Yehovah. There's a Sabbath rest on that day, first day, and on the last day. Unleavened bread. What do I have in the thing here? A shag, a feast. Unleavened bread shall be eaten 7 days, and no leavened bread shall be seen among you, nor shall leaven be seen among you in all your quarters. It says quarters in my Bible, but look at the word that it says. It's territory. In all your territory is the word that we're talking about. In all your territory. That means you can't take your leaven and put it in your garage and get it out when you're done. It's still in your territory. Get rid of it. Now look what it says. And you shall tell your son, not your daughter, your son, thy son, in that day, saying, this is done because of what Yehovah did for me, the man, the dad, when I came out of Egypt. And it shall be when your sons say to you, what do you mean by this service? We read this today. I want to read it again. It's too important. We've got to understand this. Passover slaughter it is to Yehovah, who passed over the houses of Israel, Israel's houses, Israel's seeds' houses in Egypt, when he smote the Egyptians' houses and delivered the people who were bowed head, humbled, and worshipped him. It's a sign. It shall be a sign to you on your hands. What are they talking about? It. Is it the consecration of the firstborn? Or is it about Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread? Are they related? I think they are. Consecration of the firstborn, remember, these are the men who lived. They were the firstborn. Remember what he called us. Let my son, my Bekor, my firstborn go, that he should serve me, Aved me. The Aved serve Aved Yehovah. It shall be a sign to you on your hand, and as a memorial between your eyes. This is where we get the phylacteries and the wrappings that we put on our hands. This is what the Jews do. As a memorial between your eyes, that Yehovah's law may be in your mouth. For with a strong hand, Yehovah brought you out of Egypt. Well, this is the first of 2 times that he's going to say this in this chapter. But he said it before. No, he's going to say it again. He hasn't said it before. Let me go to where he's going to say it again. I believe it's Deuteronomy 6. No, where did I put it here? There we are. What is this? What is the it that is the sign or the mark? Jeff Benner says, it is a mark, that the sign of the agreement between 2 parties. A sign of the agreement between 2 parties. Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread is a sign of the covenant, the agreement. Remember, he said the covenant, the Barit, was all about the circumcision. It's a sign between us and Yehovah. It's the covenant between us. Jeff Benner says the mark between two parties, an agreement between two parties. He's going to say it in 2, he's going to say it in 12, but I want to go to Deuteronomy, and I'm surprised I didn't put this note here, but I'm sure it's here. It's Deuteronomy 6. And these words, which I command thee today, shall be in thy heart. You shall teach them diligently to thy sons, and shall talk with them when you sit in thy house, when thou sit in thy house, when thou walks by the way, when thou liest down, and when thou rises up. Look what he says. These words. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. What's he talking about? Is he talking about putting them in our heart? Is that what between our eyes is? Doing them with our hands, with our body? I think that's really where he's going with this. Because we're not talking about phylacteries. Ridiculous. He's saying it here, and he's saying it twice in this last chapter. Let's go back. I said it was in 2 and it was in 12. No, see verse 2. Consecrate. 12. Oh, maybe it's, oh yeah, there it is, it's 16. Okay, I'm saying see verse 2 and 12, but they're both talking about the consecration of the firstborn. Let's keep reading and see how this fits together. It shall be a sign to you on your hand and as a memorial between your eyes, that Yehovah's Torah may be in your mouth. These words, and these words which I command you today shall be in your mouth, he said, Deuteronomy. For with a strong hand Yehovah has brought you out of Egypt. You shall therefore keep this ordinance. Which ordinance are we talking about? Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread? Or the consecration of the firstborn? Again, they're both related because we have a Bakar. In fact, we can't even keep the consecration of the firstborn unless we're Israel. But Israel himself is a firstborn. We are consecrated as Israel to Yehovah as a firstborn son. And it shall be when Yehovah brings thee into the land of the Canaanites, as he swore to thee and to thy fathers to give it to thee, that thou shalt set apart. To Yehovah all that open the womb. That is every, they said, firstborn that comes from animal which you have. I'm going to read it and I read it a little differently when I interpreted it. You shall set apart to Yehovah all the firstlings. There's the pater of the rakam. All that opens the womb, all the firstlings of the womb. That is every firstling that comes from an animal which you have. The males, the firstlings that we're talking about are the males, ha-zakarim, the males shall be Yehovah's. Not the females. The males shall be Yehovah, the firstborn, the firstlings from men and beast. But remember, we're still talking about Israel's seed, the Ezra men, their firstborn sons and their firstborn animals, their male firstborn animals. All that open the womb, that is every firstborn, every firstling, that comes from an animal which you have, the males shall be Jehovah's. But every firstborn of a donkey you shall redeem with it says lamb. I'm sure that's not a lamb. I'm sure that's a zone, a lamb or a goat. Not even going to bother looking it up. And if you will not redeem it, then you shall break its neck. And all the firstborn, it's interesting, they're calling the firstlings of animals, but it seems like they're calling the Bakor of men. The Bakor of Adam among your sons. Your Banim, among your Banim, you shall redeem. There's going to be a small token. I believe it's a form of a shekel. Maybe it's 5 shekels or 10 shekels. For each son, each firstborn son, we're redeeming him. He's Jehovah's, but we can redeem him by giving the money to the priest. We'll see that in later chapters. I don't think it covers it here. But every firstborn, every firstling of the donkeys, you shall redeem with as a own. And if that's lamb or goat. And if it's a herd or it's a flocks, your flocks. And if you will not redeem it, then you shall break its neck. And all the firstborn, the Bekar of Adam, among your sons, you shall redeem. So it shall be when your son, here it is, your son asking you again. So it shall be when your son asks you in time to come, saying, what is this? That you say to him, by strength of hand, Jehovah brought us out of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. And it came to pass, when Pharaoh was stubborn about letting us go, that Jehovah killed all the firstborn of the land of Egypt, all the firstborn of Egypt's land, both the firstborn of man and the firstborn of beast. Therefore I slaughter. This is the man who's slaughtering. Men are always the ones who are doing the slaughtering. Therefore I slaughter to Jehovah all the males that open the womb. The Zechrim of man and beast, of beasts, and open the wombs, the firstling of the womb, and all the firstborn, my son, I ransomed. That's what we're talking about. We're going to ransom our son. And it shall be as a sign on your hand. There it is again. What is it? The ransoming of the sons? The slaughtering of the firstborn of our flocks and the firstborn of our goats and our donkeys? Or both? What's the sign? All of it may be the sign. On your hand in the frontlets between your eyes. For by strength of hand, Jehovah brought us out of Egypt. Passover and the consecration of the firstborn. I said, see verse 9. Oh, here's where I had that verse in Deuteronomy. And these words, which I command you today, shall be in your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your sons, not your daughters. And you shall talk of them when you sit in your house, when you walk in the way, when you lie down, when you rise up. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. These words, which I command you today. Then it came to pass, when Pharaoh had let the people go, that Elohim did not lead them by the way of the land of the Philistines. Hear that? He didn't lead them by the land of the Philistines. Why? He gives us a reason. Although it was near. For Elohim said, lest perhaps the people, who's the people that we're talking about? We're talking about the men people, the Ezrach men. The people change their minds when they see war and return to Egypt. Well, we're going to see in Yasher that's exactly what they did. I want to show you something. Here's the way that we could have gone. We could have gone from Sukkot right down this way. It's the way of Shur. It goes through Kadesh and leads up to the Promised Land. He took us through the wilderness, past Etham, and we dropped down to the, what do they call that? Wadi. A wadi, some wadi. Wadi is where the water runs down to the sea. And we followed that wadi right down. It's just entangled in the land. Talk about being entangled in the wilderness. That's what Pharaoh said. We were entangled in the wilderness. And we came out here at Nueba, crossed over to Midian. And Sinai is right here. Jabal al-Laz. So Yehovah led the people around by way of the wilderness of the Red Sea. And Israel's seed went, they're the people, Israel's seed is the people. Yeah, they're leading people with them, but they're the people. And Israel's seed went up in orderly ranks out of Egypt's land. And Moses took the bones of Joseph with him, for he, Joseph, had placed Israel's seed under solemn oath, saying, Elohim shall surely visit you, and you shall carry up my bones from here with you. They did. So they took their journey from Sukkot and camped at Etham, at the edge of the wilderness. They're going to make a choice. Where are we going to go? Probably they thought they were going to turn off way before Etham. But at Etham, I'm guessing they still thought, maybe we're still going north. But we didn't. And Yehovah went before them by day in a pillar of cloud to lead the way. Yehovah went before them. He's in the pillar and in the cloud. You know what? When we see Yehovah among us, he's always in a pillar of fire or a cloud of smoke. We're going to see this everywhere in the scriptures. When he talks to us on Mount Sinai, he's in a pillar of fire and smoke. We'll see it in Joel. We'll see it in Isaiah. We're going to see it in the rest of Torah. A pillar of fire Moses is going to stand in front of when he talks to Yehovah. When did this pillar appear for the first time? Well, they were in Egypt. I want to know. I don't know. It doesn't say when the pillar appeared for the first time. But wouldn't that have been incredible to see a pillar of fire appear? I want to know when it appeared. I don't know when that is. But they were led out of Egypt by it. And Yahweh went before them by day in the pillar of clouds to lead the way, and by night in a pillar of fire to give them light, so as to go by day and night. And he did not take away the pillar of cloud by day or the pillar of fire by night from before the people. Well, I said we needed to read 11, 12, and 13. I want to try and finish a bit of Yasher today. We haven't been in Yasher for 3 or 4 weeks. I want to cover just a little bit of Yasher. Maybe just finish chapter 10, and then we can start chapter 11 next week. And the days of darkness passed away. Remember, we just had the 3 days of darkness. Not only did some of the Egyptians die, but Yehovah killed some of the men of Israel who would not follow Moses. Killed him while the darkness was on the Egyptians, so that they would not rejoice that some of us have been killed. And the days of darkness passed away, and Jehovah sent Moses and Aaron to Israel's seed, saying, celebrate your feast and make your Passover. Look at this. He doesn't give a single ordinance for how to celebrate your feast and make your Passover. It appears to me they already knew. For behold, I come in the midst of the night amongst all the Egyptians, and I will smite all the firstborn, from the firstborn of man to the firstborn of beast. And when I see your Passover, I will pass over you. And Israel's seed did according to all that Jehovah had commanded Moses and Aaron. Thus did they in that night. And it came to pass, and it came to pass in the middle of the night that Jehovah went forth in the midst of Egypt and smote the Bakor of the Egyptians, from the firstborn of man to the firstborn of beast. Now, as I said, Yasher makes it look like the ladies were killed. I think that's a terrible, terrible mistake. It may be that the author added those words, because we were just talking about consecrating the firstborn. Remember, it was the firstborn of the Egyptians who died. And Pharaoh rose up in the night, he and all his servants, and all the Egyptians. Remember, he has servants, but there's also Egyptians. Apparently Egyptians who aren't his servants, but they're still under him. And there was a great cry throughout Egypt in that night. And there was not a house in which there was not a corpse. Also the likenesses of the firstborn of Egypt, which were carved in the walls of their houses, were destroyed and fell to the ground. Oh, interesting. But now listen to this. Remember, we're talking about the bones. Even the bones of their firstborn who had died before this, and whom they had buried in their house, were raked up by the dogs of Egypt. Remember, we're saying about a dog wagging its tongue? Raked up by the dogs of Egypt on that night, and dragged before the Egyptians and cast before them. And all the Egyptians saw this evil which had suddenly come upon them. And all the Egyptians cried out with a loud voice. And all the families of Egypt wept on that night, each man for his son. And it says, and each man for his daughter. Being the firstborn, remember, the firstborn of a daughter is not a Bakar, it's a Bakorah. And the tumult of Egypt was heard at a distance. But now listen to this. Remember, we saw that it was either Moses or Pharaoh that said, you shall not see my face again, otherwise you will die. It must have been Pharaoh that said it. And Moses says, yeah, you're right. I'm not going to see your face. But they did see your face. Here he is right here. Look at this. And Bathia calls her the daughter of Pharaoh. She's not the daughter of Pharaoh. She's the sister of Pharaoh. She's a sister. She's Anakim's sister. Probably a much, much older sister, and probably from a different mother. But she's still a daughter of Malal, as Anakim is a son of Malal. But he's the second-born son of Malal. It says in Bathia, the daughter of Pharaoh, the sister of Pharaoh, went forth with the king on that night to seek Moses and Aaron in their houses. Hear that? He's coming to them. And they found them in their houses, eating and drinking and rejoicing with all Israel. With all Israel. These are men in the house, all rejoicing. It's a solemn observance to Jehovah. But they're eating and drinking and rejoicing with all Israel, they're delighted to see the work that Yehovah is doing in the earth to deliver them from the hand of Pharaoh. And Bathia said to Moses, "Is this the reward for the good which I have done to thee, who have reared thee and stretched thee out? And thou hast brought this evil upon me and my father's house." Listen to what Moses says. And Moses said to her, "Surely 10 plagues did Yehovah bring upon Egypt." Listen what he says. "Did any evil accrue to thee from any of them? Did one of them affect thee?" Listen to what she says. No. She was protected because she reared Moses. And Moses said unto her, "Although thou the firstborn to thy mother, thou shalt not die." Would have died already. "And no evil shall reach thee in the midst of Egypt." And she said, "What advantage is it to me when I see the king, my brother?" I thought she was his daughter. Now it says my brother. Yeah, that's right. "And all his household and subjects in this evil, whose firstborn perish with all the firstborn of Egypt." And Moses said to her, "Surely thy brother and his household and subjects, his servants, and the families of Egypt." That's the Egyptians. These are the men who have the families. "Would not hearken to the words of Yehovah. Therefore did this evil come upon them." And Pharaoh, king of Egypt, approached Moses and Aaron. Look at, Pharaoh was there. Here's where it says, this is chapter 10. "And Pharaoh said to him, Get away from me, take heed to yourself, and see my face no more." Here, I'll do this. "See my face no more. For in the day that you see my face, you shall die." And he called Moses by night. "Rise and go up." Yeah, it says he called for Moses. He went to Moses. He didn't call for Moses. He went to Moses. He went to Goshen. Well, I'm going to leave the rest of that out. "And Pharaoh, king of Egypt, approached Moses and Aaron and some of Israel's seed who were with them in that place. And he prayed to them, oh, you guys, help me. Rise up, take your brethren, not your sisterin. Take your brethren, all Israel's seed who are in the land, with their sheep and their oxen, and all belonging to them, their women, their children, their male servants, their female servants. They shall leave nothing remaining. Only pray for me to Yehovah, your Elohim. Pray for me. I've had enough. I get it." Well, you'd think he'd get it, but he didn't get it because there's still more coming. We'll see that next week. "And Moses said to Pharaoh, Behold, thou art thy mother's firstborn." Well, he's not his mother's firstborn. Look what this says. And even this is wrong. It's hard to get a correct picture. Let's open it up. Here's Yasher also says that Bathia is the firstborn. Moses said to her, "Although thou art the firstborn of thy mother," that's the one we just read, "but neither Bathia or Anakim are firstborn." Yasher says this, "And the king had 3 sons and 2 daughters, which Aparaneth, the queen, his mother, had borne to him, besides the king's sons of concubines. And these are their names. The firstborn, Othri. The second, Adakim. Adakim was the second-born. And the third, Morian. And their sisters, the name of the elder was Bathia, and the other, Akuzia. I don't think that their sisters came from the same mother. That's my own personal opinion, because they are much, much older. They are, well, Anakim is about 24 years old right now. Remember, he's the short, fat, hairy guy, big beard, 2 feet tall, 24 inches at best. He's about 24 years old. Bethia raised Moses. Moses is 80 years old right now. Bethia is significantly older. And Moses said to Pharaoh, behold, thou art thy mother's firstborn. Thy mother's firstborn. Thy mother's firstborn. Remember, a woman doesn't have a firstborn son. She gives a firstborn son to her husband. When we talk about Rachel and Leah having Beni, they don't have Beni. They're just showing us that it says at the top of the page, these are Jacob's Beni. Then it says Beni of Leah, Beni of Rachel, Beni of Bilhah, Beni of Zilpah. But they're all Beni of Jacob. We look at one verse and we fail to understand the truth of what's going on. Thy mother's firstborn, yet fear not, for thou wilt not die, for Jehovah has commanded. Ye would be dead already, for Jehovah has commanded that thou shalt live, in order to show thee his great might and strong stretched out arm. Here we're talking about his stretched out arm. Up until now, we've been talking about his hand. We haven't seen his arm yet. That's going to happen at the Red Sea. And Pharaoh ordered Israel's seed to be sent away. Get out of town! And all the Egyptians strengthened themselves to send them, for they said, we are all perishing. And the Egyptians sent the Israelites forth with great riches, sheep, oxen, and precious things. Remember, the Egyptians have nothing. Their animals have been killed. Their crops have been destroyed. Yeah, there's still wheat coming up. Wheat and spelt, it said. Spelt was still in the land. So maybe that's going to come up. That's probably their only hope at this point. But most of their animals, well, all of the animals, 9 out of 10 died in the plague. And the last 10% died probably in the hail that fell on the land. Nothing left. Now we're taking all of their precious things. According to the oath of Jehovah between him and his father Abraham. Here it is. This is back when he was 100 years old. Then he said to Abraham, know certainly that your descendants will be strangers in the land. He hasn't had any descendants, won't have it until Isaac is born. That the land, in a land that is not theirs, and will serve them, and they will afflict them for 400 years. And also the nation whom they serve I shall judge. Afterwards they shall come out with great possessions. There it is. And he said it, and it's going to come to pass. And Israel's seed delayed going forth at that night. And when the Egyptians came to them to bring them out, they said to them, Are we thieves, that we should go forth at night? No, we're not leaving at night. We'll go in the morning. And Israel's seed asked the Egyptians vessels of silver, vessels of gold, and garments. And Israel's seed stripped the Egyptians. And Moses hastened and rose up and went to the river of Egypt, and brought up from thence the coffin of Joseph, and took it with him. And Israel's seed brought up each man his father's coffin. This is the tribes that took all of Jacob's sons with them. And it seems to me that they may be taking other coffins of other men that have died, because look what it says. Each man his father's coffin with him, and each man the coffins of his tribe. Seems like there's more than just Jacob's sons, Ephraim, Manasseh, Judah, Simeon, Levi, and so forth. Well, we're going to stop here. It's 1:54. Thank you for joining me today. Next week, we are going to see these men coming out. Oh, before I go, I want to look for that mixed multitude. We talked about that, 12:38. A mixed multitude went up. Did I skip this verse? Maybe I skipped this verse. It said, man, Gabor man, on foot besides children. Didn't say anything about the women. A mixed multitude. Here's what it is. Arav, Rav. Arav, Rav. A mixed heads of families. I'm talking about men. The heads of families. And where they go, their families are going with them. But I thought, oh, that's so interesting to get a better understanding of what's actually going on here. The Rav, here's the Rav, rule, master, increase. The pictograph, resh, is a picture of a head. The bet is a picture of the tent representing a family. Combined, these mean head of the family. Mixed heads of families. In other words, they weren't all Egyptians. They could have been some Midians that were in Egypt at that time. They could have been from other lands who are joining themselves and going with Israel's seed, the Ezrach men, Beni Israel. These would have been brand new Ger and their families. New Ger. New Ger. Why are they new Ger? Because they're leaving the kingdom of their birth and they're joining themselves to Israel's seed. They're the new Ger. It's going to happen again. Will it be you? Or will you be one of the Ezra men at that point? I hope it's the latter for you. I want you to be one of the great ones in Jehovah's kingdom. Well, next week, we're going to talk about chapter 14, where they went, what happened with this destruction, final destruction of Egypt. There's their men in the Red Sea, the Gulf of Aqaba. Do you know that it was 1 million men? It said 100,000 men came and died in the Red Sea. 100,000, that's 1 million men died in the Red Sea. We're going to see it next week. We're going to see the strong arm of Yehovah fighting for us. Oh, I can't wait to see it in these last days. It's going to be even better. Look at this. Therefore, behold, the days are coming, says Yehovah, that it shall no more be said, Yehovah lives, who brought up Israel's seed from the land of Egypt, the Ezra men. But Yehovah lives, who brought up Israel's seed from the land of the north, and from all the lands where he has driven them. For I will bring them back to their land, which I gave to their fathers. Isn't that beautiful? What a promise we have to look forward to. Oh, I want you to be a part of that promise. Well, join me next week and we'll see the rest of this story. Hey, have a great day. Bye now.